In this tutorial, what we're going to be looking at is how to look at the tutorial for the intro to React. Now, if you're like me, maybe, I'm not saying you're not smart, but I definitely, when I came to this intro, it was hard for me to understand and acquaint myself with it. Even there's a couple times after I've done some basic React type of stuff, I would come back here and I still would just look at the code and then be like, how does this tell someone that this is an intro, right? So we're scrolling down here before we start, we're going to make a small game. So already this is assuming that, there's going to be some game mechanics. You're going to feel comfortable with it rather than maybe a basic website, a hello, how are you? Something along those lines. And so, this tutorial, I have all these sections here, scrolling down. So let's say you read through all of this and, everything is going well, maybe you find success and support resources, Stack Overflow or whatever. So you see some stuff like this and you're like, okay, class extends React component. We got some render or return. You learn more about what the language is doing, and let's just say you go all the way down here and you're like, all right, this should be good to go. Now, where's it at in here? So view the full code, not full code at that point. It's at the very bottom here. Let me scroll to the bottom. And full code at this point, or the final result. So then you get here, after reading through all of that, right? And so you have this, actually, I think this is the wrong one. Give me 1 second here. Let me click on that. Winner X. So my example isn't going to go this far to drop all this on the side because that's kind of not the point here. But, you look at this code and you have all this stuff here. You're scrolling down. There's another class. And you have these return, then you have a render, and then you have this comment, and then this DOM thing, and then some kind of calculate winner, and, this other class, and then you have this function square props up here. Then you look at the CSS and you're like, okay, CSS, it's fine, it's whatever. You've probably done CSS at this point. Then you look at all this and you're like, what the hell is going on here, right? Like, what is all of this? So then you, like me, do like an npx install React, or you go to, something like Code Sandbox, because that's just easy. That just spins it up for you. And then everything kind of looks like this. It's your first time coding in React. And then you're like looking at all this as like a, air quotes, simple game. And I could see how easy it is to get lost, right? Maybe there should be multiple levels of examples from basic web page, then maybe include this game at some point, or at least rewrite it to look how someone would download it now. So what I'm going to do is this link, if I hopefully remember right, if not, comment down below, should be included. Just even go to the reactjs.org site if you want to find it. This will be included. And so what I've done on another screen here, I've actually gone through and rewrote the code, deleted a lot of stuff, dropped the F word repeatedly, and got it to work just fine. So one thing I am going to do that I am going to suggest, and it's not cheating, right? Just go ahead and copy and paste all his, I think it was Dan Abramoff wrote this. Just copy and paste all his CSS in here. That's, the least of your concerns. And so we're going to break this up into a few different things. First, we're going to have a subfolder for the game mechanics. Then we're going to have a board component. We're going to have a game component, which I believe just houses the board. And then a square component, which is going to live inside of the board. So enough talking. Let's get to it and walk through these steps here. So first, I'm going to create a file, and I'm just going to go ahead and create the board. All right, so we have this here. We're not going to write anything just yet. And then we're going to go create another one. We're going to call this square. Well, that's definitely not what I wanted. Here we go. Then I'm going to do game.js here. And then I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call this game mechanics or something like that. And this is not going to be a component. It's going to be a function that will determine the winner. And so now that we have everything we need, let's start off with the most basic thing, which is going to be the square. It's incredibly small and tiny, and it's really essentially the board. So once you get past the square, I don't want to say you got a lot of this done, but yeah, you're going to see what I mean. So let's go ahead and type this out. All right, so we're just going to continue with that. Sorry if I did some funky edit right there. This is probably best to watch on a laptop or a desktop. On your phone, this may be hard to read. So I apologize for that. So we have a square, and if we notice, we bring this up, all our game board right here is squares. So this should tip off to you that, hey, we're going to use like 9 of these things coming on in. So, you should be fine with this concept right here. And you notice that there's X's and O's. So there's only 2 things that are going to be put in a given square, which is an X or an O, or, nothing. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and you have to click on it too. You have to click on it, and that will update this distinct square, right? So those are the things that, some of the base mechanics that go on here. Now, if you wanted to add some more functionality, calling an API and storing all the moves in a database, go for it. But yeah, for right now, we're just doing it in the front end. So as you see right here, we have a class named square. That's simply for the CSS. An onClick, which is what we're going to pass later on. We have not written this yet, but you will see it. That will control what value this is right here, which will be, the capital X or an 0 or O, right? So let's go next, and let's go to the board. And the board is like the meat and potatoes of this whole entire thing. So what I'm going to do right here first is create the return, so we could see the board laid out. And after I write the code for laying the board out, what I'll do then is go into the game, import the board, and then move the game inside of app.js. I could have just dunked this inside of app.js, but this to me is kind of a special component here. And I believe if you are making a game, it should be housed in a component before you transfer it into app.js, just so you have, the modularity, or if that word even makes sense in this case, that your final result is in this component, separation of concerns. So let's go to our board here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import something else later, which is the calculate function that we're going to use, but we don't need that right now. Let's just go ahead and do this. And now I'm going to copy and paste the code in here from my other screen into here. We're going to discuss it just to save a little bit of time. So we have this in here, and we have render square on board. Well, this has given us some errors right here. It's not really liking this. So as you could tell by the name of it, it is going to render a square on the board for us. So let's go ahead and write that function out, and then we'll talk about how it works and how it applies here. So now we have this render square on board, and it's looking a little rough right here because we're still getting more errors. So let's go ahead, just so we could jump and not get into the game logic yet, because this is going to force us to do that. What I'm going to do is comment this out. So now we have this thing called, squares. Okay, so we have render square on board. We have the square component. So what is this, this squares thing? And so I'm going to copy and paste this on in. And also a link to this code will be provided from the one I'm copying from, will be provided in the description. Let me move this on over here so I have some more room. And so we have a hook right here, use state hook. And so if you notice here, we have 9 squares here, and we're creating an array of 9, and we're filling them each with the value of null. So this should start to make sense a little bit, hopefully, because we're going to need 9 distinct, squares coming on in. And so, and yes, we have a status right here. This is, we'll get to that in just a moment. We could actually probably comment this out, or we'll handle it when we get to rendering this on the screen, if we haven't already. So now we're returning a square, right? And so think of this function as intaking the index. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 9 all together. And so each square, in the, this one is going to be 0. And then this one is going to be 8. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. And that is how this is working out right here. So now that we have that figured out, right, let's go ahead and just do a brief comment on here, except just to get things working. So then let's go into our game, because we just have to do, not a lot here. It's pretty much kind of like a square. It's a very small component. In board, I noticed this word right here. I always feel like I'm spelling it wrong, like I'm spelling the word bore, or I should be spelling B-O-R-E-D. Sometimes when you just look at words after a while, they just look very strange. Let's try and tighten this up a little bit so it's just easier on the eyes to follow. So if nothing blows up, that's good. So then in here, then we're going to take this game and we're going to move it into app.js. We didn't have to, but we're going to. So you see that we've successfully moved game, which is holding, taken the game, which is successfully holding the board. And then now we dropped it into app.js. So now we see kind of the fruits of our labor. Nothing is happening. So now app.js is fine. As far as I remember from when I wrote this, there's nothing else we have to do here. Game is fine. We have nothing else we have to do here. They're just components that hold other components. That's it. So now we're back in here. And if I were to, uncomment this, there'd be a crash. It would complain at me. So I think now would be a good time to go into the calculate winner and discuss how this works. Because to be dead honest, I've written some complex stuff in my life, but sometimes there's certain steps you go through for some problems you have, and when you work through them, they seem kind of obvious. But with games and other things that you may not think about on your daily work or at school or just in your free time, it may not be obvious. The code may be simple and you get like 80% of it, but there's just a couple of rungs in the ladder that prevent you from easily, understanding it top to bottom. So let's go ahead and type this out, and then we'll discuss what's going on. So this code I've only touched slightly, but it works. So here we go. So this one we may have to go through a couple times here, which is fine. We're not, going to be hurting anything here. But what we have is the lines. And so this is called lines. Maybe it's a bit of a misnomer. We could call these victories, right? We could call them, ways of winning. So if you notice 0, 1, 2, if you get, let's just use the X's, 0, 1, 2, you win. Okay. 3, 4, 5, you win. 6, 7, 8, you win, right? And then you have 0, 3, 6. So it's covering all the bases, diagonal, every single way you could win this game. This is what lines stands for. So we come down here, and what we're going to go through is a for loop. And it's going to be for the length of all the way to win, or all the ways to win, if I'm using proper English. So we're going to go through all the ways to win because, well, we have to check them every time, right? Even if it's obvious we're never going to get 6, 7, 8. We still have to go through it. Maybe there's better ways to engineer this game, but like I said, I'm just kind of reconstructing the code from the website. And so for the first step here, what we're going to do, we have this const, we have A, B, and C. And so what we're getting is lines I, which right now is 0, which is right now this. So this is going to be 0, 1, and 2. And so this is kind of where it's kind of interesting to me how we went in here, or how the code works in here. So what we're first going to check is the square coming in, which you may be thinking, what is this square? Well, it's this square. This square, which are these guys down here. Now I'm going to flesh out the code a little bit later, but essentially you're going to be sending in, and the array is going to be updating every single time. What is an X? What is an O? What is an X? What is an O? So this will be updated. So the squares, as the game is updated, is coming here as an argument every single time someone plays. And so it's going to go to square, index at this point, 0, And it's going to say, is 0 the same as index, 1? Is index 0 the same as index 2? And these values default to, or I shouldn't say default, but when you do square 0 compared to square 1, square 0 compared to square 2, essentially for using these numbers, that checks is x equal to x and x equal to x? Is 0 equal to 0 and is 0 equal to 0? That's all it's asking. Is the thing that's in here the same thing that's in here? And then is the thing that's in here the same that's in here? And it will go through all of these steps repeatedly asking that same question. And if it goes through all these and it's like, sorry, not today, it returns null and the game continues. Now, we haven't written the logic on how do we determine a winner, but that's how it works. So just know that this is just loading the values as we come on in here. And then it's going to those indices and asking, are they all X's or all O's? And if so, return me a value. So this return squares A was kind of weird. I figured it'd be some kind of Boolean or some other way I thought the game would go. This squares A will make sense in a moment. So this is going to return something, and then this value, I believe, is going to go in an if statement, and it's going to trigger the winner. So now that we have this, let's go back to the board. And so let's go ahead and let's uncomment this stuff. It may break here, and that's fine. So now let's write the handle click. Now I've updated some things in here. And so anytime you click on this right here, so we have this on click coming on in, and that is going to set off, or, this is being pulled in as an on click, even though we're sending it in as this handle click here. It's still going to work fine. So we're going to pass this handle click in here with the index. And so what this does in here then is say, okay, give me a copy of the squares. So slice, if you don't give any arguments, it gives you the array back. Did we need that here? I didn't ask questions. It seemed like a perfectly okay thing to do. So I just kind of kept this and went with it. And then so the next thing I did is I, kept the line here, if calculate winner, and, we get the squares copy, we return here. So I just kept, kind of these two from the code. So the next thing I did is I have a squares copy, which is this up here, which is me just pulling it from the use state from line 6. And for the index that is going on in, right? So whether it's 0, 1, or 2 or whatnot, this is going to equal, is X the next thing? And so right now as the game starts, X is the next value that is going to be registered on the board. And so what that will do is say, okay, so this copy of the squares, which is a copy of the use state, we're going to mark that as an X. The writing to the square happens here. The calculate winner briefly happens right before that. And then, although there's another place where we're going to write calculate winner. And so this is where the updating of the board occurs in conjunction with line 16 here, which will set using set squares. It'll set the update in the state for what the choices were. And then what we do, so we could go between X and O, X and O, X and O, is we just use I think it's the bang or the not, whatever you prefer it. We put that in front of the X comes next. And this will then, rotate between players. So simple mechanics right here. So let's come up then. And since there's going to be updates to the board, we're going to want ways to, kind of check that instantly. And there's probably more advanced, more strategic, smarter ways to do this. What I'm going to do is write out the code, and we should essentially be done with it by now. So let's go do that. So what this block of code here does is whenever it loads again, right? And I know we're not using state for some of the stuff. It's fine. Plus, you don't really want to update state in an if because, or in a loop, I believe, because you could get infinite re-renders. And yes, I forgot that when I was retyping this out, and I thought I was the stupidest person ever at like 11 at night. So every time this thing will load, then what's going to happen is we're going to calculate the winner. So we're going to take the update from the squares when that happens, which occurs when anything is clicked. It'll reload, and it will go ahead and take this value. So maybe there's some X's and some O's somewhere. It's going to go into here, and it's going to roam through like I've already shown. Hey, are these all X's? Are these all O's? What combinations are there that signify a winner? And so keep in mind that A at any point could be an X or an O. It's just going to the index, retrieving the value, and then just doing a comparison. Is A equal to B? Is A equal to C? And so this could be an X or an O. One or the other. It can only be one of the two, right? So then if there is, it gets into this if statement, it's like, yo, we got a winner. It will then say, oh, that's pretty cool. So then we make this status, which then corresponds to this status right here, which is next player X, which is, you could kind of tell we don't have a winner yet, right? And so it'll come down in here, and if it says, hey, we have a winner, that's pretty cool, right? It'll take the status, and we're going to have, winner, and then we're going to append to it the, who won, X or O. But in this case, as you could see right here, it's just saying next player and, whoever else is up next. So that's how this example works. Let's save it. And let's see if I'm sure when I edit it down, it'll be shorter. But let's see if the 36 minutes I've put into this has been a waste and I screwed up somewhere. So we're going to do one that's easy. And they have a winner. Can't click anywhere else. Sweet. The game is over. That is how you take all of this and then rewrite it so it kind of looks more like modern React. Now, are there other efficiencies I could have done? Other things, lines I could have left out or simplified 1,000%. When I went into here, his HTML file, I did not even add anything. I ripped it all out. You don't even think about this stuff right here. The CSS, like I said, I just copied this wholesale No problem there. And then this is what I've been showing you the whole time. Broke it out into separate files because I think it's important to see the separate files, right? Because sometimes when you see everything jammed in one, it's just, I don't know, maybe it just doesn't click, and it didn't for me, and I'm not afraid to say that. So this is how you split them up. You have your folder of the game mechanics, because I like to, you can keep functionality in your components, but I think more higher up decision making and also just ways to make your files slimmer should be moved out. Then we have the square, which is each of these. Then we have the board, which essentially lays out, in this case, the logic and the squares. We have the game that houses the board. And then our game component, which is everything we've done so far, has been moved into the app. So I can move it, if I was to make a more full-blown website and I didn't want it in app.js, say I wanted it in, some other component, now I can move it. So this is the example. Hopefully I've helped out. Let me know in the comments below. I love doing this stuff. I love looking at things that challenge me or used to challenge me and explain them so future people like me could get moving faster. So if you like what I'm doing, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video.